Hello and welcome to the 15th episode of my podcast, Historians in Conversation, which is hosted by the University of Lodz in Poland. My name is Michael Green and I'm very happy to welcome today my guest, Professor Alexander Schunka from the Freie University of Berlin. Professor Schunka is working on the topics of migration and specializes on the early modern period. But the reason that I invited him today is the fact that he has a very interesting and I would say inspiring academic career. So I welcome Alexander to my podcast and I hope that you enjoy our conversation. Hello, Alexander, and welcome to my podcast. I'm very glad to have you here today.
Thank you very much. I'm proud and honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, I must say that I know you for quite a few years, but only from online correspondence, and we finally had the opportunity to meet in Warsaw earlier this year, and that's when I invite you to participate in this podcast. You are specializing on the questions of migration in the early modern period, and also on my favorite Huguenots. So I think that's a topic that we have in common. And it seems that you are doing a lot regarding research, a lot in popularization of history, and our conversation today will be about where does it all come from. So, as I always say, traditionally, I'm asking about your childhood. So, could you tell a little bit about your family?
Okay, so
where do you come from? Your parents were born?
Right. I come from Munich in the south of Germany, and this is also where I studied history. I grew up with quite a lot of books, actually, because my mother worked for a book publishing house, and my grandfather, whom I had never met because he died before I was born, he brought into the family quite a lot of books by a couple of publishing houses, because he worked as some kind of a book salesman for a while, and he also collected books. So when I was a child, I was surrounded by books, not history books though, and I felt quite familiar to reading. Maybe I guess I was a bit of a quiet child, and I rather turned to reading. And it took me a while when I studied history, and when I became a historian. I worked at the university to be less quiet and to kind of be present in discussions. So that's something I had to learn. But I think I was quite familiar with books. I like to read things on explorations, and Germans usually, they at least in my generations, they sometimes grow up still with Karl May. Karl May is it's actually a rather cheap author, and it's a low quality author from the late 19th century. A German who imagined himself being part of the exploration of the Wild West, and it's full of stereotypes we don't like anymore today. So one part of his work is on the Wild West, the other part is on the Middle East, actually, and he's usually the German blonde, fair-haired hero who is dealing with the indigenous people, and I cannot recommend this to anyone today anymore, but this is how we grew up with these kind of cheaply made adventure novels, and I guess they somehow inspired me to learn more about the past, to learn more about other cultures.
You know, it reminded me that I, as a child, also loved to read those adventure books, but not those particular ones. My favorite ones were Polish series by Alfred Szklarski. I think it was called Adventures of Tomek. I think there were 8 or 9 volumes which were translated into Russian, and I really loved them as a child. But recently I looked at them again and I thought, well, nowadays it probably would have need to be slightly rewritten to accommodate the current reality. You mentioned that your mother worked in a publishing house and you got interested in books. And I wonder, when you went to school, What was your favorite subject?
Actually, it was history, but the funny thing is, our final exams after 13 years of school. Nowadays, German kids go to school only for 12 years until they reach maturity to go to university. So in my time in the 70s and 80s and early 90s of the 20th century, we had to attend school for 13 years to get the Abitur, the final exam, and I my grades in history, although I loved the subjects and I liked my teacher, my grades in history were really bad. I think this was the worst part of the grades I had. It was something like between 3 and 4, which is if number 1 is the best grade, then 3 and 4 is not good, especially not because this was my one of my favorite subjects, and didn't feel comfortable with this grade, and I think the only person I had to blame was myself. But um, when I started studying history eventually, then I might have done this slightly out of comforting myself that I'm still able to be fascinated or try to understand history, and that my high school grades were not something that would really tell much. So my high school exam was okay, and history was also okay, but it was not according to the standards I thought it should have been.
You know, it's pretty interesting because a lot of people get inspired by the teacher and, well, in any subject, history or math or whichever subject, but it also translates normally into grades. I think your case is pretty interesting because it's not the way it was. But do you remember your history teacher? Was it a charismatic person that
He was very
somehow sway you away into learning history?
right. He was very charismatic, and I liked his classes a lot. And I was actually good until my high school exam, my final high school exam. I did A's or ones quite usually, but not at the final exam. So yeah, I had fun, and actually I never wanted to be a historian, though. I wanted to become a journalist.
That's exactly
So
my next question. What did you study for your bachelor studies, and how did the choice come?
I wanted to be a journalist, and someone before I chose my topic of study, someone told me that if you want to be a journalist, the best thing is to study history, to have some solid basis of knowledge, or a solid basis in how to solve problems, how to write. So start studying history if you want to be a journalist. And I at quite some point, quite early in my studies, I realized that in order to become a journalist in Germany in the 90s, it was quite common, and I think it still is, that you have to do internships with newspapers in order to get a writing proficiency for papers, and these internships were normally not paid. So sometimes you would get, if you're very lucky and your articles would be printed in a newspaper, then you would get paid per line. But as a intern who would just start, it's not very likely that your articles would be paid. So since I had to earn money, I simply thought I could not afford to do this career working without payment for newspapers, and I kind of got stuck at the university. So I liked to study history. I had fun there, and one of my minors was the history of the Middle East. So we had to choose one major and two minors. That was before the introduction of the BA-MA structure in Germany, before the Bologna system came about. So we would well, decide whether we want to become teachers, and we would have to do a state exam for this, or we would do an MA in history. And I decided to do an MA in modern history, which encompassed also early modern history. And my two minors were auxiliary sciences of history, which means paleography and epigraphics and reading charters, for instance. And the other minor was the history of the Orient, of the Middle East. And this took quite some time because it involved learning languages I didn't know then. And
Which one?
well, I had to please don't check this. I had to learn Turkish and Ottoman Turkish, and I think my colloquial Turkish is not good, but I'm still able to read academic literature if I have to, with a dictionary next to me. So
Wow,
this took some time, but on the other hand, I had to be rather quick in my studies because it was a money issue, and I was lucky to find one job and then another job as student assistant with a professor I studied with, and this was not too well paid, as these jobs are today not very well paid in Germany, but it was paid at least, and it gave me the chance to learn a lot. And well, end of story was that I felt quite comfortable studying history and yeah, pursuing a doctorate, I guess.
we'll get to doctorate in a moment, but for now I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the BA study, or the combined BA-MA study. I know that it was similar system also in the Soviet Union, and probably, as far as I remember, also in the Netherlands and in many other places. So it would be 5 years, if I'm not mistaken, altogether. And I wonder, did you have any mentorship during that time? Was it something that was available at your university in the sense of career development?
I don't think this would have been available, and I didn't have any. No, I think we were quite on our own. I remember seminars where we were a real good group of students. We kind of self-mentored one another, and people would well, proofread or discuss seminar papers like among students. But this was something we kind of arranged on our own. In fact, it's not totally true, because I had some in my first year I had some kind of mentorship from something which is called Fachschaft. It's a student organization from more advanced students who are approachable for help, like how to do footnotes. They might also discuss papers with you, and I I went there, and they were very helpful, and these were two very good students, and I benefited from their advice also, but no official mentorship throughout my studies.
I see. I think that the idea of peer help is very important, and I think about my own study, and we didn't really create such a group, and I've not heard about such informal groups in other places, but perhaps it's a very good tip for anyone to organize such a group. And now I can actually suggest it to my students who start teaching very soon, and that can be a very good tip.
I think it very much depends on the people on the seminars. Like it happens in some seminars, and it doesn't happen in others. I think in my first seminar at university, it happened because our academic teacher there was really demanding, and it was a lot of work for us. And we said, well, we are not going to be intimidated by this. We're going to do this, and maybe it was also out of necessity, but it was fun.
I see. Well, you finished the degree. I don't know if you can call it master's degree at the end, or was there some other title? It was
Magister. It was called
magister.
Magister, like the old Latin version of masters. Yes.
And how the decision to continue for a PhD came? I mean, was there another option to go, for example, to take a job as a lot of people go and work in some state job after studying history, or some people go to politics? You mentioned that going into journalism was no longer an option, but perhaps something else. Were you
Um,
considering anything?
Not really, to be honest. I think I got stuck at the university. It happened because I had these two jobs as a student assistant, and I think I was doing okay there, and I was lucky to work with one professor who um, was able to kind of give me a short time job in order to help prepare a larger research project, some sort of a starting job after my MA. And so I was paid for the following months after my MA, and it was clear that if this larger research project would come about, then this would also be a chance for me to do my doctoral thesis there, and have a job at the university. And this actually happened. So as I said, I got stuck at the university because I had no real feasible other options, and I guess I don't regret this, although the German system is sometimes quite hard when it comes to the length, the duration of the contracts. So I was financed for 1.5 years through this professor, and then we call this a collaborative research enterprise. The German word is Sonderforschungsbereich, and it consists of a lot of small research projects, and in each of these research projects, one or two people would do their dissertations or would have a postdoc contract. And these smaller research projects, as well as the bigger collaborative enterprise where you work together among philologists and historians and art historians and whoever, on a larger topic, these research enterprises, they usually are financed for 4 years. Well, now it's 4 years. At that time, it was 3 years, and then you had to reapply and could try to get another 3 or 4 years. And this was how I did and where I did my dissertation in Munich with Winfried Schulze. So, this is also how I got in touch with the history of migration, because my Dr. Vater, as we say in German, my academic teacher, Winfried Schulze, he said, well, just go and check in the archives what would make sense for an investigation of confessional and political problems in the empire after 1648. I'm talking about the Holy Roman Empire here. I went to 3 archives, and I got stuck in Dresden and found a lot of material on the Bohemian exiles, and the way they went to Saxony and other places after the Battle of the White Mountain in the 30 Years' War. And what interested me, or what started interesting me, was how these people settled in new surroundings, and how they contributed to something like an immigration society in Saxony in the mid or late 17th century. And my academic advisor was never really into the history of migrations, but he said, well, if you find enough material there, it could be an interesting topic, so do it. And I had a lot of freedom there. And he was happy that finally something came about, but it was not that I had to deliver chapters every 2 weeks to him.
How long did it take you to finish your PhD?
Well, it took me 4.5 years between the MA and the PhD, but I worked on the PhD proper bit less than 3 years.
And once you were done with the PhD, that's the moment that a lot of people are very happy about, but also dread, because you don't often know what's happening next. And as you were approaching the end of your PhD, once again, what were the options that you had at the time?
Same. I think I got stuck at the university. I had to finish, or I was under a certain pressure. It would have been good to finish the PhD on time within the first 3 years of funding of this research project I was working in, and that's what I did. And at this point, I knew that we had reapplied and we had done this successfully. So I could have stayed in the research project for longer after my PhD, but I was lucky to find another job. I was, I don't know, I applied for another job in Stuttgart at the University of Stuttgart, southwest of Germany. I got a position as research and teaching associate. We call this sometimes wissenschaftlicher Assistent in German. So I was working closely with another professor, Joachim Balke, who is a specialist on early modern and modern history of mainly of Central and Eastern Europe. So I learned a lot on Bohemian and Polish history there.
Do you also speak Polish?
No, unfortunately. I'm trying to learn Polish because we are currently having a research project with the University of Warsaw. I feel quite ashamed that I don't have much Polish. I can read Polish again a little bit with a dictionary next to me, but it stops after saying thank you and ordering a coffee, I think. And I can read the signs on the street, but I have to get better there.
Well, I think that's quite impressive that you can read Turkish, Ottoman Turkish, even if it's with a dictionary. In any case, you mentioned that you finished the dissertation, you found this temporary job, but perhaps you could tell a little bit about the way that the academic career is constructed in Germany, because it's pretty different to, for example, the Dutch system, where you finish PhD, you can take postdocs as many as you like, and then you can apply, or at the same time, you can apply for regular academic jobs or just go outside academia. But there's no limit. And in Germany, this is not really the case. Maybe you could explain a little bit how it works.
This is really difficult, and this would take us quite a while, especially now, because the German governments and also the German state governments try to change the laws, and it's not yet quite clear where the story leads to. The basic problem is that Germans would have to struggle quite a long time until they get to permanent jobs, which means they have often they have scholarships that fund their doctoral dissertations. Sometimes they work in research projects like I did for my doctoral dissertation, and then they could try to find a postdoc scholarship, or they can try to find a postdoc position, which is usually temporary at universities, and there are very few such positions. So I think funding a dissertation is not the real problem. It is not that easy, but it's not the real problem compared to what comes next. And there's also a chance to install something like junior research groups. There are a couple of programs for this on a federal level, but also on a European Union level, so that postdocs can work quite independently, and they have their own doctoral students. There's another option, which is the option of junior professorship, and we might come to this because I also had the position of a junior professorship for a while. In the 2000s, when these junior professorships were installed, they were often non-tenure track. So this was another way of being employed for 6 years max, I would say. Nowadays, a lot of professorship, a lot of professor positions are announced, starting with junior professorship, but including tenure track. So there will be an sort of a tenure evaluation, as quite similar to the United States, and then these jobs would be made permanent. So the idea is to give German academics, German historians, not just historians, more options to plan for the future. But everything is still quite vague, and it is, of course, difficult to get these tenure track positions.
Thank you. You got the job in Stuttgart, and how long was it, if you remember?
I was in Stuttgart, I think 5.5 years, and my position was interrupted by a couple of scholarships, and that was actually very nice of my boss in Stuttgart, because he said, well, if you want to do your second book, if you want to do your habilitation, you need to go to the archives, and you need to do this with scholarships. You cannot do this just during semester breaks. So I applied for a large scholarship, which I didn't get, and I was very disappointed. And then I applied for everything I could have got, like smaller scholarships, 3-month scholarships, 6-month scholarships. And for miraculous reasons, all the other applications were successful. So in the end, I had a short scholarship in London at the German Historical Institute. Then I had another scholarship straight after in Emden, in Eastern Frisia, which hosts a very important library on Reformed Protestantism. And the next scholarship then was in Halle, which kind of inspired my interest in the history of pietism. And the final scholarship was in Wolfenbüttel, and Wolfenbüttel is, I guess, the place where European and North American early modernists have to go, and I was there for 6 months. So in the end, it was really long, and my partner didn't quite like it that I was away for so long. We were like we had married shortly before that, and then I said, oh, I go on a scholarship, and then there was the next scholarship and the next scholarship, and in 2008 I came back to Stuttgart. So you asked about how long my contract was. It could have been longer, but I found something else in 2009, which brought me to the state of Thuringia in the center of Germany, to Erfurt and Gotha.
The professor I worked with at the University of Stuttgart advised you to go on research trips to write a habilitation, and I wonder, were you writing it in Stuttgart, were you writing it somewhere else, and how does it work? What exactly is habilitation, and what are the steps that you had to take to achieve it?
Thank you for this question. Okay, this is also a very complicated issue, because when I started with the second book, or with the habilitation, there was more than one option to become a kind of a full historian. One option was the second book, the Habilitation, which is something like an extended doctoral dissertation, I would say, and extended in methodological depth, ideally, and also extended in size, I guess. Depends on the book. So, and the other option would have been a junior professorship. And these junior professorships, they don't require or they didn't require that you did your habilitation, but they required a second book. So, but without the full things such as presentations, kind of an exam or a colloquium with kind of examining questions. So you could do it either way, either with the formal habilitation or without the formal habilitation, but people needed a second book as they do today. So I decided to do both. I got the position of a junior professor in the University of Erfurt, connected with the research center in Gotha, which is a very good place for early modern, for researchers of early modern history and anything early modern. And it's 20 kilometers west of the city of Erfurt in Thuringia, right in the middle of Germany. It's one of the new German states. It used to belong to the German Democratic Republic before 1989 or 90. So I went there on a junior professorship, which was non-tenure track. During my work, I tried to finish the second book, and I tried to do it as a habilitation. So with the formal ceremonies to hand it in, to have the colloquium and all this. And often it's good not to do the habilitation at the same place where you are employed as a junior professor, because I could have joined my own habilitation committee in theory. I could have joined other habilitation committees because I was a junior professor, so I belonged to faculty. So I decided to hand in my habilitation in Stuttgart while I was working in Erfurt, and that was totally fine with the people I worked with. And I have to say that it took me very long to finish the habilitation, and I'm not sure if it got better because it took me so long. I finished my doctoral dissertation early in 2004, and I published the dissertation as a book in 2006, and I handed in my habilitation in 2014 in Stuttgart. So that's quite a while. And for several reasons. I had more teaching load than in Stuttgart. I had to do lectures. I had to write lectures in Erfurt, and I had other administrative duties there that I didn't have before. So there's always an excuse, and maybe it's a matter of priorities or prioritizing. But in the end, it took me quite long, and I was not really happy with the duration of my habilitation. But I was very happy when it was over.
I can imagine. So once the habilitation was accepted, you passed the colloquium. Once again, what are the next steps?
Well, the next steps
because that's the part. Let me interrupt you for 1 second. When I was a postdoc at the Leibniz Institute for European History in Mainz, we had the person who was working with us. He was finishing his habilitation, and I remember a conversation I had with him when he said, well, it's either I'm going to get a professorship or I'm going to end up as a taxi driver. So I imagine that maybe he was joking about the taxi driver option, but that the possibilities are not that bright and not that many.
Well, the habilitation does not come with a job, or a job doesn't come with a habilitation. So what happens to many people with a habilitation who do not get a job straight after, they would work as Privatdozent, and they don't get paid as Privatdozent, like a private lecturer. This could be a translation into English. And it means that they have to teach at least one course a year or one course per semester in order to keep up their eligibility to be chosen as a professor. So this is a very 19th century system, and these
quite
people
cruel one, I would say.
It is absolutely cruel, and these the people need to have another job to make money. And in the ideal case, they would have a research project, and they would be employed within the research project, and then they can do their course, like one course a year or one course per semester, depending on the university, and wait for job calls, and well, hope to be lucky in the end to get a position as a professor. This was actually different in my case because I never worked as a Privatdozent. I had just when my the habilitation procedure was over, I already had another job in Berlin, and so I was never a Privatdozent. I went from the Gotha job, from the junior professorship to another professorship in Berlin, which had nothing to do. They chose me even before the habilitation was finished. Or why, during the procedure. So I could have, in theory, I could have failed the habilitation, which would have been not very likely, I think. But I was sure that I had the next job in Berlin at the Freie Universität.
Where you are now.
Yes.
And that's the same job.
That's the same job.
You mentioned that you are now a professor at the Freie Universität of Berlin, Freie University of Berlin. And just to mention that there are two big universities, the University of Berlin and the Free University. And there you are doing research on early modern history and on history of migration. And I want to ask you if you feel that what you're doing nowadays has anything to do with the current state of affairs in the world. There have been a lot of refugees in the past, well, now 8 years or so, from 2016. Do you think that what we are doing as historians contributes anything to the modern society?
Okay, let me start the other way around. I think we all, as historians, are influenced by what happens in our times and in our societies. While we acknowledge this or not, we cannot hide ourselves from current developments. So in a very easy way, I could say that I chose my topics from reading newspapers, and it's not just the migration thing. I also deal with religious transfers, religious connections, and it would also be very easy to say, well, we have some discussions about how Islam fits into Western societies. This could also be a very topical issue. And another topical issue is that I deal with the history of material resources, especially with water. And I want to find out how people deal with a shortage of water in the early modern era, especially in landlocked societies. So again, this is also something quite topical. Back to the migration issue, I'm dealing with migration since the early 2000s, and migration even then was a topic. It is a topic in German politics and society. Well, the whole 20th century through, if we think about what happens during and also after the Second World War, if we think about what happens with the West German Gastarbeiter migration of Turks, of Italians, of former Yugoslavians to Germany. And we could also see points in the GDR history. And then we have the 1980s, where the former chancellor says Germany is not a migration or not an immigration country. That was Helmut Kohl, actually. I think now Germany it's very clear that it is an immigration country. So my history, my personal history of migration, although I'm not a typical, I don't know, we're all migrants, but I'm not the typical person of migrant descent, I guess. My personal history of doing migration history goes back quite a while, and my doctoral dissertation was on migration history. So why are we doing this? It has gained in popularity definitely since 2015. You're perfectly right about this. I remember when I was invited to conferences in the 2000s, it was like I was usually the final speaker or one before the final speaker. And now we have the topic migration, and that's Alexander Schunka. And all the people were apologizing that they had to get their trains and they had to leave. Now the migration topic at conferences is usually more in the center, and this also has something to do with the public awareness. What can we learn from early modern migrations? What can we learn from early modern history? Maybe we can learn ways how people dealt with not the same issues, but with similar issues under different circumstances, and maybe this can make the polemicists nowadays. We cannot make them quiet, but some people can find a more relaxed attitude to something that is a human condition. We can see migration is a human condition, and if we look at the actors, if we look at the people involved, the migrants, they often have very good reasons to migrate, and we can see this in early modern cases as well. And of course, we need to also try to understand the, so to say, sedentary people who are not so sedentary often, but who would develop fears, and we can try to learn to be more relaxed about things that would happen, and we could try to find ways of communication, find ways to increase our knowledge about these phenomena, which would, well, in the long term, perhaps not increase mutual hatred, but rather stop mutual hatred. And maybe early modern history can be a contribution to this. We cannot learn from history. Cicero thought we can learn from history, but history can provide us stories which are perhaps good to know about. Is that a sufficient answer? Maybe not.
I think so. Well, I would like to thank you very much for this very interesting conversation and the insights that you gave on different topics relating not only to your own motivations, but on how the German academia works. I think it's important to discuss different systems and to see that there's no perfect system anywhere. And the only thing that drives us mostly is the motivation.
Right, and if I may get one more sentence, I listened to your podcast with Willem Freihoff, and he said it's not a vocation to be a historian; it's a job, and I would very much support this, and I would also say it's often a service job, and the service part, dealing with teaching, of course, dealing with administration, dealing with administering students, is also a large part of my job, at least. And if we don't consider this as a service job, then well, maybe we're wrong in this job. So this is something we all have to do, and if we sometimes get to do research, then it's nice, and that's what I hope to do in the future.
Thank you
Okay,
very
thank
much.
you very much, Michael.
Thank you.